All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Plunge into Tech webinar series with Corwin. This is a series of absolutely free webinars that we're doing all summer long to help you get caught up on the newest technology and stay up to speed for the start of the school year in just a few short weeks for some people. If you didn't see last week's webinar with Catlin Tucker on blended learning in action, you can still see that on Corwin Connect, which is the website where we're hosting all of these webinars. So take a look around, read some of our blog posts, and check out the other webinars. Some things to just keep in mind during the webinar, follow the Plunge into Tech hashtag on Twitter. That's where we'll be monitoring questions and comments, and we'll just make sure that everyone's questions get answered at some point during the webinar or afterwards, whatever we can make happen. Also to know is that we're giving away the Connected Educator series. So in order to participate in that contest, all you have to do is submit, post a tweet with your idea for how you're using the Plunge into Tech hashtag. The more likes you get, the higher your chances are of winning. So we'll give away 3 Connected Educator series to any participants who take part of that. And then the last thing is just be sure to stick around to the end of the webinar so that you can download your certificate of completion. So now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Zachary Walker. He is a faculty member at the National Institute of Education in Singapore. He's actually speaking from Singapore this morning, so it's morning over there. So thank you very much, Zachary, for being up early and doing that for us. Zachary is also an international speaker and consultant and has won several awards, including the 2012 Think College Emerging Scholar Award. And he is the author of Teaching the Last Backpack Generation, which is the topic of our webinar today. So thank you so much, Zachary, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Take it away whenever you're ready.
All right. Hi, everybody. Now that all those embarrassing things have been said, we are going to move on. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and get this loaded up, and we'll get going. So I do encourage everyone, please do use the Twitter feed. If you have questions at any point, let's stop and talk and share. We'll be here for the next, I don't know, 45 minutes or so, 45 minutes to an hour, and I look forward to talking and having a discussion. Just so everyone is aware, I first want to just say thank you for being here. There are lots of things that you could be doing right now. You could be at the beach, you could be outside probably eating, you could be reading other books, or a lot of you would just be drinking. So thanks for taking the time to be here. School is coming quickly, and I know all those things look tempting, but I think it's great that you're here. So thank you so much for that. So why last backpack generation? Well, about 5 years ago, I was doing some work, and I started seeing more and more headlines like this, that students are doing more coursework on their smartphone than on their desktop. And I think if you have kids that are in college, especially, you'll see them a lot of times on their phones, obviously all the time. And sometimes we ask them what they're doing, and they actually can show us doing homework, whether that's answering questions, or I've had students of mine write papers on their phone. Now, to me, that sounds terrible, but to them, this is the world, and this is the environment they live in. And so it became, fairly clear to me just a few years ago that that this is kind of where we're headed, and that students are not going to need backpacks necessarily. That doesn't mean, of course, that they won't use them, but they're not necessarily going to need them in class because they're going to be able to carry all of their learning, all of their resources, everything just right in their pocket. And so obviously when this first started happening, 2006 is, when the first iPhone came out, and then 2010 with the iPad, it was a little scary for some of us. But what we are seeing is that, devices can help students learn. There's a huge meta-analysis that just came out earlier this year that looked at all of the research on technology in the classroom, and showed that and when teachers were using it right, of course, just like anything, if you use a pencil correctly versus throwing a pencil at someone, if you use technology correct, that it can be very, very effective. And scores have actually gone up across content areas. And so we're seeing more and more and more and more and more of this. And that is the name behind the last backpack generation. Now, this is one of my favorite quotes because I think it really kind of clarifies what we're looking at when we talk about this generation of learners. Your boss doesn't care what you know because the Google machine knows everything. Your boss cares about what you can do with what you know. That's the only thing your boss will pay for. And I think what we're seeing more and more and more is this idea that, knowledge itself is different than information. And in the past, as teachers, we've been really focused on kind of sharing information, which is important. But now they pull any level of information out of their pocket. And so, one of the things when I do professional developments in places, I ask teachers, who thinks they know more than my phone about their particular content area? And that's just the case. I mean, we have Uncle Google and Aunt YouTube, and they know a lot of things. And so as all this was starting to kind of, in the last 5 years, starting to take more hold, I was very lucky. These are some of the places that I've been in the last 2.5 years. And as I was kind of traveling, I started getting all these ideas from teachers that were doing just some amazing things and really taking advantage of some of this technology. And so I thought at some point, I really need to just put this in a book. And so that's the idea behind this book. And the way the book is outlined, and we're going to get into practical strategies here in a minute, but just so you kind of have an idea what you're looking at here, this is the way the book is outlined. This is just a page from the book. It's very, very simple. On the left is the content area. The middle is a small activity, how long it takes and time to implement. And then in your class, you can put down some ideas that you could do. So we cover basically 11 things in the book. And these are very, very simple things, but are absolutely critical when we talk about educating this generation of learners. So we talk about polling, photos, video, texting, Twitter, QR, and augmented reality, which if you've been, I guess, alive in the last week, you know how popular Pokemon Go has become, and hopefully no one's been either hurt or terrified by these masses of people who are using Pokemon Go, but that's an example of augmented reality. That's one of the things that we talk about in our book. Google Earth, how can you use those in class? How can we use back channel discussion? Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm not seeing your slides. I don't know if you've progressed ahead yet. One of the things you might want to try and do is if you share your entire screen and start slideshow, that might make the slide share a little bit smoother.
You haven't seen any of the slides so far?
I see your title slide. It's a very nice title slide.
That is interesting because they've been moving right along here. So, all right, let's go. Okay, what do you see now?
I still see the title slide.
That is crazy because on my screen, everything is clear. Like it's showing exactly what.
When you did the screen share, it gives you two options to either share PowerPoint or to share your entire screen. And I find that if you just share the PowerPoint or whatever program you're using, it tends to freeze. Whereas if you share your entire screen and then start the slideshow, it's a little bit smoother.
All right, I'm sorry, everybody. Hold on real quick. I've done this before and it's usually worked, so I'm not sure exactly where the issue is.
And if it doesn't work, you were doing a great job explaining it without the slides. I just thought I'd let you know.
Yeah, but yeah, it's no fun if you can't see the slides. So I mean, I certainly don't want to be just hearing me and looking at me the entire time. That's terrible. So what are you seeing now? Are you seeing me again?
Yeah, I'm seeing you.
All right. So give me 1 second. Let me see here. So it's what do you see now?
I see your title slide with the slides down the sidebar.
Okay, so you see that?
Oh, yeah, I went to the second one. Perfect.
All right. This is part of the fun of technology, right?
Yep.
Do you see thank you? Or do you see the title slide?
I see thank you. So you're welcome.
Okay, so do you see the food?
I always see
Do
the
you
food.
do you see the alcohol?
Of course.
Okay. All right. Well, it looks like we might be back on track then. And now you see an article?
No.
Okay.
Oh,
So
yeah.
then I will just play them from here.
Oh, okay. It moved ahead. There's just a very long lag. So, okay. I think it's working now.
I'll play them from here anyway. I don't mind if people see what's coming next. That's part of the beauty. So anyway, here's the headlines everyone missed. That students are more likely to do coursework on their smartphone. That this article talks what I was talking about, the meta-analysis that shows that screen time in classrooms can be very helpful. This is the quote that thank goodness I read it instead of relied on you all to read it. This is where I've been. This is the book. This is how the book is outlined. And then these are those 11 things. So are we good now? Is everything okay?
I think we're good.
Okay. All right. Great.
Yep.
So anyway,
I'm all caught up.
Everybody. Thanks for the heads up. I'm not sure what the issue is, but that's all right. It's part of the fun. And this is actually, I always say, because obviously if you've taught with tech or if you use tech, it goes wrong all the time, right? And things happen. And one of the things that I always talk about when I do professional developments is we all have those colleagues that when something does go wrong, they, go up in arms and they throw their device down and, well, I'm not, and they stomp away and I'm not going to use that again. And one of the things that's really dangerous about that is setting a precedent for our students that that's okay to behave when things get tough in math class or in language arts class or in their language learning class. So we have to be very careful of that. And when things don't go right, we just have to say, oh, well, we'll figure out something else, or you know what, we'll try again tomorrow. So thanks for letting me know, and we'll just keep moving here. So anyway, these are the 11 things that we talk a lot about in the book. I'm only going to talk about a few examples. I mean, in the book, we have close to probably 700 to 800 examples total. I'm obviously not going to be able to get through that today. We're just going to talk about a few of those things. And the things that we're going to talk about, I always ask these 5 questions before I'm planning a lesson for my students. Number 1, is it relevant to their lives? Number 2, do they have a relationship? You all have probably heard of the 3 R's: relevance, relationship. Is it rigorous? And then the 2 ones I think are very critical today's learning, especially for this generation. Are they consuming information or are they producing information? And finally, do they leave curious for more? And one of the best things that we can do as teachers is, obviously, as we've talked about a lot, pass on not only this love for learning, but this love for production of knowledge. So those are the 5 questions that we always try to ask. And when we talk about specifically technology, I think it's really important that we think about this as well. When one person hesitates because he feels inferior, another is busy making mistakes and becoming superior. And working with teachers all over the place, one of the things that constantly comes up is this fear that, well, I'm going to do something wrong, or they're going to know, more than I do, or it's not going to work correctly. And when we talk about Carolyn Dweck's, research, which has been getting a lot of publicity right now on grit and growth mindsets, one of the things that is very, very important to recognize is that you can't talk about grit or growth mindset. We have to show it. And so if we want our students to have that kind of, okay, I'm going to put myself out there and take a chance, then we have to model that as well. And I think technology allows us a really nice way to do that. So let's get to some of the strategies. Again, we're going to make this very practical over the next 30 minutes now. We'll talk about some of the strategies that we can use in class and how those are effective. So one of the main things that I talk about is just having a student use what they already do. And one of the things that we know that they love to do is take photos. So how can we use those in a class? Again, to answer those 5 questions that we talked about before with relevance, rigor, relationships, curiosity, and then producing things. So one of the first activities that I do at the start of class is simply an intro activity where I have them pull up their favorite pictures on their phone. And we simply introduce each other. And they don't just say, I'm, Zachary, and I went to this school, and this is what I like, and I play this sport, or I'm in band, or whatever. They have to pull up photos from their phone that are their favorites, and they explain them to each other and to the class and in small groups. And this really helps relationships, because now I can see their family, I can see their friends, I can see what's important to them. And that is really good for me to build a relationship with my students, but it's also really good for some of those who maybe wouldn't share those things, wouldn't get that personal, to kind of go outside of their comfort zone and show things that are important to them. And it helps really build a relationship. So another thing that we can do here, and if you look at that title of this headline, this is from 1988, 24 hours in the life. And so one of the things that is a really cool idea is have your students at the start of the year record in photos 24 hours in their life. From the time they wake up through the next morning, what happens in their life, and just to take as many photos as they can. Now, you can do this obviously individually, or do it in your community, 24 hours in the life of, in this case, Long Beach, in the life of Kent, Ohio, in the life of Harlem, in the life of Thousand Oaks. Fill in your state or your city or your town, and do these 24 hours in the life of projects. Because again, this helps build relationship with students, but it also helps them to see their community in a different way, to see their life in a different way. And it gets them to think about not only their own life, but others as well. We often do writing prompts in class. And one of the things that we can do is have students give us photos that they think would be really good writing prompts. So if you were to walk into class and this photo would be on the board, what would you want to write about? And I think that there are these really powerful photos and powerful images that our students capture every single day. This is from an exhibit that I saw a couple of years ago. And obviously I could update this at any point, but more importantly than you taking photos is having your students take photos. Challenge them to find the most intriguing or interesting photo or image that they can find, and then turn that into you, and then later use that as writing prompts. Because one of the things that we do if we give writing prompts to our students is we often say, okay, here's what I want you to write about, and it has to be so focused, which sometimes that's really important, but other times we just want them to write. So giving them a photo and let them choose whatever they want to write about. Maybe someone wants to write about the apparent anguish that this person's going through. Maybe another person focused that this is made out of Legos. Who knows? But there's lots of things we can do with writing prompts. Another thing is give them choices. Put up multiple photos. And so instead of just giving one photo to write about, give them multiple photos and have them give choices about what they can write. Do they, how many adjectives can you use to describe this photo? How many things that we talked about in class that you think relate to this photo? Whatever it may be. But again, and this is the big thing, have them be the ones taking the photos a lot of times. So one of the things, and this is one of the best exercises that I think we can do, is every single thing that you teach, have your students take a photo of something in the community that relates to that. And one of the things that's really critical is helping them, again, build relevance. And if they can't find something in the community, then why are we teaching it? And I think that that's really critical. Everything that we teach, we should be able to, in some way, pull back into our local community. So whether it's a math concept or something that's happened in history that we see traces of, maybe it's a particular type of legislation, maybe it's a story that you're reading that, how can you relate Huck Finn back into your community and things that happen in your community every day, or any other novel or book that you're reading. But the key is they have to go out and find something outside of school that relates back to what you're teaching. It makes it relevant. It also helps them build a relationship with content, because now when they pass that building with that particular slope on the roof, they think about your class and they think about how that ties in with the relationship, right? And that's really, really critical. And the other thing is this can be really challenging. It can be rigorous. And so all those, this particular activity hits all the 3 R's along with them producing. And many times it will lead them to be more curious. Instead of just taking one picture, they'll take multiple photos of things that relate, because now they're thinking in those terms. And that's really, really critical. So this next photo that I'm going to show you here, I'd just like us to think about all the different things that we could pull from this photo. No matter what you teach, you could use this photo for something. I've listed some of the questions out there to the right that you could potentially use. But again, the key here is taking things that are local, that students know, that they see, and thinking about how we can tie it back into our lessons. Another one of my favorite activities is doing this. How many of you see things in your community that are incorrect? And I think we see this quite frequently. Maybe it is something like this. Maybe it is a math mistake. It could be any number of things, but we see these all the time. And when I was in 7th grade, my teacher challenged us. She said, if you can find some kind of mistake in your textbook, I'll give you an extra credit point. So now one of the things that I do with our students is if they find a mistake in the community, they can turn it in and they'll get extra credit points for it. Or in some classes, I'll actually build it into the syllabus. So this is one of those things that, again, can make them much more aware of their surroundings. It can actually get their head out of their device to look up, to notice what's going on, to read critically, to think about everything else that's happening in their area. And one of the things that I think is important, though, is that you not just have them take a photo, that you have them take a selfie. So I always have my students take selfies with. This is from a workshop that I did here in Asia. But you can see surface reflection. It should be surface reflection. This student found that on one of their syllabi. But if you don't have them take a selfie, they can go on to Google and find any number of these kinds of mistakes in the community. So I always have my students take selfies with them. And then that way they get extra credit points for it. But I also know that it's something that they found. They didn't just go search for. So more ideas with photos. Could you have them document things throughout the day? What are you eating today? How many times did you follow a law? How many times did you pass a homeless person? Any of these things, again, we're tying it into what they know how to do. And this is the best thing about every example that I've given you so far. Do they have to use their devices in class? No. I personally have my students, let my students have the devices out all the time. I think that if I take that device away, I'm essentially taking away a library of knowledge from them. But if you're in a school, or if you don't feel comfortable with that necessarily yet, you can still have the students use mobile devices outside of class. And it's how we use them. They don't have to download any apps. They don't have to do anything specific with this. They can just use what they already use already, which is their camera. And I think that that's a really important piece of this. Could you, and this is getting a little tougher now, could you have your students demonstrate a concept? Okay, so if you were to look at this photo, what concept is this demonstrating? It could potentially be velocity or speed or safety or family or transportation. It could be any number of things, right? But if you ask them to get a little bit more specific, can they demonstrate something like irony? Now I'm just going to let there be some silence while you figure out what exactly is ironic about that photo. But I think it's important that we kind of think about how we are allowing our students to demonstrate these concepts. Because if you tell me I have to demonstrate irony in class, I can probably write down a definition and maybe even use it in a sentence. However, taking a photo of it shows that I truly understand it. How would you demonstrate creativity in a photo? How would you demonstrate that? And so here's another example of that. I'm assuming that you will get their Ice Ice Baby, for those of you who lived during that glorious generation. So again, how can your students take photos of concepts you talk about in class? How can your students take photos documenting change? we do this sometimes already with science experiments, but can they do it outside of the class? What about local wildlife, or if there's a building project, or what about their own growth as a student? Taking a picture at the start of the year, at the middle of the year, at the end of the year. What about their first attempt on an assignment, which has been heavily, which gets heavily edited versus this attempt? So again, this idea of them using photos can be really important. Could you take a photo and have them write a story about that photo and say, this is where the story starts, or this is where the climax of the story happens. Tell me the rest of the story. Or it all ends here. What happened in this story? All these, again, especially if we're using student-produced photos, can be really, really great ways for them to do it. Now, this is one of my absolute favorites. I got this from an English teacher a couple of years ago, who has their students take pictures of family members who remind them of a character in the novel reading. So for example, if they're reading, to go back to this story, Huck Finn, who reminds them of each of the main characters in that novel from their family. And that is a way, they said, this particular teacher, he said the novel really came alive for these students. And they all had to turn in these photos and show and talk about why. And they really got some great discussions out of this. But you could also do it with historical figures or elements in chemistry. Which of your family members remind you of gold or copper or oxygen or any of those things? And you can have some really great discussions around these photos when you have them bring them into class. What if I asked you to summarize the last book you read using only 5 photos? Everyone think about the last book that they read. And then what if I said you had to summarize that using only 5? Or what if you had to summarize the last chapter you covered in class in just 3 photos? How would your students do it? And again, summarize you can fill in the blank. We're all experts in our own content, and we know our students, we know how to relate to them. So you can figure out and adjust all these for your own use. But the idea here is that they're summarizing something through images rather than words. Not that words are bad, obviously, we want them to use words, but visuals are very, very powerful and very impactful. And then at the very end, one of the things that you can do is create a collage about that particular lesson where each student has to contribute 1 photo. So then consider this. Let's say that you have a 2-week unit or a 3-week lesson or something like that. Let's say that throughout the year, that becomes the art in your class. You create a collage of each lesson, and then you put that up on the wall. And then the next lesson you cover, there's another collage. And then the next lesson you cover, there's another collage. This is a fantastic way for our students to be contributing to their learning, to review daily, and to have prompts about what they've already covered in class. So again, going back to our 5 questions, let's think about these. Are photos relevant in our students' life, and can they make it relevant to the content that we're teaching? Do they have a relationship with the content, or do they have a good enough relationship with me that even if they don't like the content, they'll figure out a way to make it work? Is it challenging? I would say that summarizing the last book you read in 5 photos is really challenging. I would say that having to go out into the community and find these errors makes us think differently and can be very challenging. Again, the big thing is not that you don't ever want to produce some photos yourself and share them with the class, but the big thing is have the students produce the photos. That's critical. And oftentimes what we see when we use more images is that it leaves them curious for more. So these are just some of the strategies that we talk about using photos in the class. Now I'm going to move on to video here, and I'm going to share a few more strategies. But again, understand that we can only go through a few of them here. These are just some ones to get started with. So talking about video, Mark Prinsky says that video is the new text. And I think this is becoming more and more clear with this generation. And let's think about it, not even from a generational distinction. If we think about ourselves, if you struggle to do something, do you go to Google or do you go to YouTube? Many of us go to YouTube to watch a video about how to complete something, as opposed to going to Google to read about how to do something. And I think that is just more and more prevalent. So we're seeing this more and more and more. And one of the things that's so critical about video and why we have to have students take a lot of video and share a lot of video is something that Rushton Hurley points out. He talks about, good versus good enough. When a student turns in a paper to you or a project to you and you grade it and you turn it back. They just want it to be good enough to get whatever grade they thought they deserved. But when students take video and they show it to their classmates and you show it in class, they want it to be really good. And there's a huge difference there. That idea of good enough for us versus being really good for students. So this is critical, and I think it's really important that we utilize video for how powerful it really is. So one of the simple ways you can use video right at the start of the year is just have students record their yearly goals. My academic goals for the year are, boom, and just have them, do a little selfie video. My behavioral goals for the year are, my athletic goals, extracurricular goals, social goals, whatever the goals may be. They can be very broad like that, or they could be much more specific. My goals for this math class are, my goals for fill in the blank are, but have them video them. And then what you can do at the end of the year or at checkpoints along the way, pull those videos up and say, how are we doing? How are we making progress? Are you on your way? And it's kind of one of those old things, the camera don't lie, right? So when they see these things, they get a real good idea very quickly of how important seeing themselves on video, and they've made this deal with themselves, so to speak. So could you have your students do a video journal? Instead of writing down how they feel each day, challenge students to take a 30-second video, and then they reflect on their day, and have them do this over a course of a time. Maybe they do it every day, maybe they do it once a week, etc. But they have to take a 30-second video. And then here's the thing about this. You can use that as a writing prompt if you need to as well. So this is critical. You can use these kinds of videos as a writing prompt. Now, again, if we're going to say you're a math teacher and you're thinking, well, I don't have my students take a daily journal. What if at the end of each day they had to video one thing they did that day that related to math, or one thing they did that day that related to the specific content that you're teaching in class that day. And every day they had to kind of document their learning via video. This can be a 5-second video. It doesn't have to be 30 seconds. But how can you kind of have them document these video lessons throughout? For social skills, one of the best things that we do, I have a background in special education. One of the best things that we do when we're working on social skills is play videos in foreign languages and then have students analyze what the characters are expressing. So if we have students who have trouble with social interactions, especially students maybe who are on the autism spectrum, or students that have EBD and aren't able to self-regulate, this can be a fantastic way for them to start to understand other people's thoughts, feelings, and just watch them. So you play the video, but especially what you do is you can also mute it. So they can't even hear the sound of the voices and how loud or soft they're talking. You just have them play the video, mute it, and then have the students analyze what the characters are expressing. Really, really important and valuable. So can you video successful student work and share it? One of the things that we don't necessarily do enough as teachers is praise. We don't praise our students enough, and we don't share, we don't promote our student work. So one of the great things that we can do is, if they do something really well, you may not know it ahead of time, so you may not have your camera ready to video it, but you can afterwards do a little video interview. Ask them about this amazing project they just did, or ask them to work their way through the assignment, and take a little 30-second video, and then you can put that on your blog or your learning management system, etc. And these are the kind of things that, again, build relationship, but also can help our students to really kind of think through the process as much as the product that they turned in. Not only was it good, why was it good? What did I have to do to make it good? And this can be really, really helpful. And parents love this too. Parents, community members, principals, they love to show off what the students are doing well. Again, kind of to go back to what we did before, summarize the last book you read in a 1-minute video. What some schools are doing is in their libraries, they're actually, every book that a kid reads, the kid has to do a little 1-minute summary. And so then they're putting that video on YouTube that's protected. Okay, it's not for everyone to see, it's a protected link. But then they're linking those to QR codes. And so on the front of each book, a QR code will be there. And if you use that QR code, up pops a video of one of the kids reviewing it. One of the kids talking about what they thought happened in that book. This is a really, really nice idea because it's not an adult saying, hey, you should read this. I'm pull up this book and I see the QR code and I see a video of Johnny, who's a year ahead of me, who read it last year and thought it was great. Or, you know, the girl that I have a crush on, she read it and so I want to read it now because she did the video review. So this is a really great way to use video in class. End of the year projects. One of the best things that we can do, not to summarize necessarily a lesson, but have students take video and photo of everything in your class throughout the whole year. The good, the bad, the ugly, the time you dressed up for Halloween, the Christmas celebration, the projects. If there was maybe a tragedy at your school. I was working with a school in Atlanta, a middle school, and one of their classmates had died that year, tragically. And at the end of the year, they put her picture and they talked about her. But what they did is they had a year in the class video. And the cool thing about this is not only do they walk away with a year in your class as kind of a memento, so to speak, but what they also do is it allows you to start next year's class with that video and say to your class next year, hey, this is what you're in for. This is what last year's class went through. So the good, the bad, the ugly, everything, right? Make it silly, make it fun, have them put it to music. But again, you don't have to do all this. And I think this is the critical thing. The students are producing this. This is a project that the students have to produce. They have to summarize everything they learned. They have to put it in a video. They have to apply music or whatever they choose to do. But they have a lot of fun with this, but it's also a really nice way to end the school year. So this is a short video that I'm going to show right now. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to show it. But one of the things that I think is important is that we have, we model sometimes. We want them to produce, but we also need to give them a model. And so this particular teacher, and if you're interested in this, I'll share my email at the end. You're welcome to email me and I can get this information to you. Puts together a rap every year. She makes a math rap video. And this particular year, she did it on divisibility rules. And she gets up there and she makes a whole rap about math. And she records it, videos it, and then shares it with her students. Now, what her students have to do to follow along with that now is that they have to create their own rap about math. They have to create their own rap video. And she puts them in small groups, but some of the things that they have turned in have been incredible, not just from the video perspective, but the content that they cover and their understanding of it has increased tenfold because of this assignment. And she has seen, since she started doing this 4 years ago, that she was a participant at a seminar that I did in New Jersey about 4 years ago. And we keep in touch now. And she has told me that over the course of the 4 years, not only the videos gotten better, but kids are a lot more excited about kind of math and this everyday thing that they have to do because they know they get to express it in a different way. Another really neat exercise, and again, I'm not going to show this video because of our tech problems here, is video vocab. Vocabulary is not the most exciting thing to teach. And so one of the things that, that you can do is have your students, instead of writing down, you know, a definition and using it in a sentence, have them actually video it. Have them video the meaning of the word. This video, and again, please feel free to email me if you want, is from a 7th grade teacher who has her students do this. She gives them their 20 words each week. They have to pick 15 of them, any 15. So she's also instituting the power of choice, which is a huge motivator for our kids. She's given them the choice to pick 15 of their words that they really want to explore. And then what they do is they video little tiny snippets of what that word means. So uncover, uncomfortable, tall, etc. And they have to video little snippets. And 15 words takes 1.5 minutes by the time they kind of edit them together, which she teaches them how to do at the start of the year, but then they have to learn how to do it on their own. And then what she has seen, and this has happened over and over and over again with video, 2 things. First of all, as a class, the scores go way up. We've actually done a small study on this. We've seen scores go up over 1 full grade for an entire class when they start doing this video vocab exercise. The other thing is the students that are English language learners, the students that have disabilities, oftentimes create the best videos. what we've seen is that these students know what the video means. They just can't necessarily demonstrate it in the typical ways or the traditional ways that we have them demonstrate vocabulary. So giving them the opportunity to express it and express their learning in a different way has made a huge impact, not only for the entire class, but especially those who sometimes struggle in other ways. So last little one here, if I were to ask you right now to take a little 10-second selfie video of yourself with one takeaway, one strategy that you've learned from today's talk, could you do it? What have you taken away? And then you would have that video, right? So I call these 10-second takeaways. And one of the things that I do with my class is I do this probably 2-3 times a week. They have to do a 10-second video takeaway at the end of the lesson. Then what happens 3 weeks later before they have an assessment? What do they have? They have these little 10-second takeaways from each day of class. One of the interesting things that students have told me is that they actually learn more, they remember more when they watch a video of themselves as opposed to looking down at their notes. Because when they look at their notes, they see their handwriting, which looks the same every single day. But when they see themselves on video and they see what they were wearing or what bag they had, it takes them back into that actual class. It takes them back into that actual day. And they end up pulling out much more than what they just say in their little 10-second video. So it's really interesting. I wasn't expecting that, but that's one of the things that we've seen that has occurred. So again, great way to use video is just a little 10-second takeaway. Now, what if everybody doesn't have a device? One of the things that I do, and I'm not going to show this entire video again because of our concerns here, but I have all the students line up by the door at the end of class with about a minute left in class. I stand there with my camera, and you will see, or you would see, the first person says one takeaway, and then the next person comes, and they say a takeaway. And they say these as they're leaving class. So they kind of walk themselves out of class, and they have to leave a takeaway. Now, here's the caveat that I always say. You cannot say anything that anyone else has already said. So this is really challenging, and sometimes you may just pick 15 students and rotate through, or 10 students. But what happens now is not only do they get to hear their own takeaway, they also get to hear everyone else's takeaway. Finally, with this strategy, what do I start the next class with? I start the very next class with these takeaways, because now I've built a bridge between what we did in last class and what we're doing in this class. And that is a really, really successful strategy. Students feel awkward. They laugh about it at first. It feels funny. The first time you show the video, everybody's going to be laughing at each other. And that's okay, right? That's part of it. We want our students to laugh because we know that's good for the brain anyway. But the most critical thing is after they get used to it, now they're having access to all these other takeaways, not just the 1 or 2 things that they learned that day. So again, 5 questions. Is it relevant? Yes, we make it relevant by what we give them to do. Do they have a relationship? We know that they love video. Hopefully they like us. And even if they don't, hopefully they can enjoy the content. But when they use video, they can see the relationship. And again, this can be very, very challenging sometimes, depending on how we do it. They are the ones who are producing most of the videos, not me. They have to do it. The teachers that I work with don't do very much video at all. They model it at the start, like our wrapper, our math wrapper, but they don't do a lot of it. The students do most of the producing the video. And oftentimes this leaves them curious for more. Maybe curious about content, or maybe curious about a technical skill or an editing skill or something like that, or storyboarding perhaps, because if they're going to do video, they have to create storyboards. So all those things are really critical. Now, again, I just went through photos and video, but a few things you want to think about when you're getting started with media, and all this is covered in the book. How are you going to organize that? Do you have a learning management system? Do you use an Edmodo or a Haiku or a Blackboard or an Edline or fill in the blank? There's a ton of different LMSs out there. All of your students should have a media release agreement. And do you have one for the school? Make sure that you inform the parents that they're going to be taking more photos, more videos, and this really is for class. And ask your parents to go through it with them. Share that stuff. That's critical. And then you obviously want to be very clear about how you're going to protect your students' anonymity and privacy. That's pretty critical as well. So as we close here, I want to show 5 of my favorite tools, and then I got a couple of wrap-up slides. But at this time of year, I think it's it's interesting to look at just 5 tools that are out there. If you haven't heard of Newsela, it's a great tool. What you can do, if you see over here on the right hand side, is there's Lexile levels. So within the text, as they're reading an article, you can actually change the Lexile level. The students can actually change the Lexile level. You can give them little quizzes, and then based on the quiz results, it will change the Lexile level according to their level of reading. So Lexile levels are according to reading. So as they read the article, if they're getting better and they're learning more vocabulary and it's more fluent and they can answer the questions right, it will get more difficult. It can also, if they're struggling, drop down. But again, the students have the choice of where they want to pick, what level they want to pick it at. And sometimes teachers say, oh, well, will they pick the easiest one? I've never had a student do that. And the teachers that I've worked with say that students always want to challenge themselves. It's like gamification for them. They want to get to that next level. So this is a free resource, really good. You have to go in and sign up for an account, but it is free. Brilliant resource. Second favorite one currently, Newsmap. This is just from today. I went on about 15 minutes ago. If you see, what you see here is all headlines from around the world. Now, down at the bottom, and I know it's kind of small, if you see the colors, the little boxes, the red box, yellow box, green box, etc. Those are, so it's categorized by which kind of story it is. So red stories are world stories. The yellow are national stories. The green, I think that is tech stories and entertainment stories. But what this does is the bigger the box, the most reported that's being right now. So every 15 minutes, this updates, and it takes stories from around the web, from around the world, and shows you what are the biggest stories at this particular moment. So if you were to go in an hour from now, it may be different. If you're going to 10 days from now, it will definitely be different. So this is a really great story. The other thing I like is, and again, you can't see it close, but if you go to newsmap.jp, you will see at the very top, you can switch languages. So it will give you the biggest stories in Spain, or the biggest stories in Italy, or the biggest stories in, and it will give you those stories in the native language. So that can be pretty good as well. Another site that I like is Newsy. Newsy is all most recent news in video clips. So they're just constantly updating video clips with the latest news and the latest updates. Instagrok, searching is the new literacy. Again, to go back to what we started about at the start, information is knowledge is understanding how to use that information. Instagrok is a fantastic search engine that can kind of help create concept maps, etc. I love iSidewith, especially in election years. What you do is you go in and you take that you answer a set of questions, and it can talk about how important is that issue to you, how strongly do you feel about it, but you answer a set of questions, and at the very end, it will tell you who your beliefs align with the most. This can be really interesting, not only for us to do, but for our students to do, because oftentimes they'll talk about candidates without actually understanding the issues. So this can be a really nice thing to do. Okay, so I know it's evening where you're at, and if you're feeling like this, again, I want to go back to the start and say thank you so much for being here and taking the time. A couple things to remember: your class is your co-teacher. So as you do some of these exercises, and as you pick up the book and you start to look through it, and you say, "Well, I'm not real familiar with QR codes," your class can help you with that. One of the things to remember is, that every teacher has the right to live in a cave. However, they do not have the right to drag their students in with them. We have to continue to try to push ourselves and prepare our students for their world, not our world. And I think that's pretty critical. I'm about to turn it back over because we've got this slide right here, which again, this is the book. And you can get some percentages off and some discount codes and such like that. So I will turn it back over. I'll say thank you. Oh, and if you've got to join, I'm assuming that they'll explain more about this in a second, right? But thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. Feel free to be in touch with me via Twitter. Go to the website. You can email me, find all my contact information there. I've appreciated your time very much. So plunge on in. Have a good time, and thank you.
Okay, hang on one second.
It's kind of scary when your face pops back up there. That's a little much.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Zachary. That was wonderful. To download the certificate of completion, they just scan that QR code on the slide that we just passed through. You can go back on the recording as soon as we finish the broadcast. And if you enjoyed today's webinar, please join us next week for Jared Kavili. He's going to be talking about going Google on July 26th at 1:30 Pacific time, 4:30 Eastern time. Well, we'll be exploring a wide array. I can't talk today, I'm sorry. We'll be exploring a wide array of Google tools and how you can use them in your classroom to engage with students and foster learning. So thank you everyone for staying with us late in US time, and thank you so much again, Zachary, for getting up so early in Singapore time. We really appreciated that.
I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Okay, well, I hope everyone joins us for next week, and if you missed any of our previous webinars, you can check out all of the recordings for this webinar and everything else on CorwinConnect.com. Thank you. Bye.